Hey guys, got a quick game to share with you, and this really does have a point. So I started playing early this morning. I'd actually had a really good night's sleep, the best sleep I've had in a long time, and I think that actually left me feeling quite tired this morning. Hadn't had any coffee by that point. I played 2 games, absolutely got trashed in the first one. Literally in 12 moves I resigned. The opening just went so badly for me. Very interesting. But the game I want to share with you is the game I played after that. And it kind of went all right for a bit, but the point of this is, are you somebody who resigns too quickly? Are you somebody who refuses to resign ever, which can be very annoying, right? But there's kind of like a middle ground tactic or strategy that I think not many beginners and improvers take into account now, but that becomes much more of an issue at higher levels, and that is drawing. The ability to force a draw, or to get a draw when you're in a losing position, because you can gain valuable points. So if you're in a tournament, getting a draw can mean the difference between 1 point to your opponent and or half a point each. But similarly, when you're playing online and you're trying to look after your online rating, the difference, I mean, if you're playing somebody around your own level, a draw can be massive, right? If you can convert a losing position or a slightly losing position where you're likely to lose 8 points and they will gain 8 points, if you can manage to scrape a draw, then that's normally 0 each, right? If you're playing somebody stronger and you can get a draw, you can normally gain points for the draw. So let me take you through this game. It's really interesting. It's got d4, e5, so I'm toying with the England gambit at this point, which black declines with d5. Probably not the ideal move. We have knight to f6, knight to f3, and e4 to kick the knight. So the knight now moves again, and I kick it again, and the only place it's got to go is h3 on the side of the board. Not looking great for white at this point, and now I'm starting to feel fairly confident. So I bring out a bishop. We have e3, I castle, c4 is played, and d6. So what I'm doing here is I'm lining up the idea of maybe capturing this knight and giving white doubled and isolated pawns on the a file. So we have then bishop to e2, and this suggests that maybe white has got ideas of castling there. Now what I probably should have done at this point is maybe hold fire on this idea and see if white castled next turn. But I went straight in and captured on h3, g takes h3, and now, I mean, this king's got nowhere to go. It really doesn't want to go to either of these squares. So it's all looking good for black right now. I move my rook across to the e file, lined up, well, protecting this pawn, and also potentially lined up with white's king. Knight comes out, knight to d7, bishop out. So these bishops now in the middle of the board don't look very threatening, because they are they're aimed at the sides like this, right? They are, however, covering quite a few key squares. So the queen comes out to c2. Maybe white's looking to castle long now. I play queen to d7, and now white does indeed castle. So he's got a bit of protection around the king there. Okay, so material is still equal, but at this point this is the first tactic that I spot. White has 2 attackers on this pawn, and I only have the 1 defender. So I lose a pawn, we trade knights, and now I grab the doubled pawn on h3. So material now again is equal. We have rook across to g1, and I grab the pawn, white recaptures, and now I line up my king on this open file, this open c file, now that these pieces have moved into more attacking positions, and clearly there are threats of a discovered check. So the king sidesteps, very good, and now I bring my queen back to d7, and we have queen there. So now there's 2 attackers and essentially no defenders of g7. So what I decide to do now is push f6, so that with a discovered defense by my queen, the computer didn't think that was the ideal move, but hey ho. And now we have a pawn push, and I sidestep with my king. So my idea is now to run away with my king, zigzagging his way maybe to b8. Queen withdraws, now behind the bishop, and there is actually a potential tactic. No, not yet, it's coming up. So there's a tactic here that is currently defended by my having this knight on e5. All right, so look at pins in particular, and look at which of my valuable pieces are on the same lines. Could be horizontals, verticals, or diagonals. Okay, so now we have, this is a really good move, I think. Bishop takes h6. Now, if pawn captures here, then that invites queen to g8, and that I think would be checkmate. So I realize that I can't capture the bishop. It is not a sacrifice. So I carry on with my plan of moving my king away, bishop retreats, now king to c7, and now the pawn in kicking the knight away. Now, did you spot the tactic? That this knight is defending and that this pawn push is undermining. Well, one thing it does do is it actually hangs a rook. So I grab the rook, but now pawn takes knight. Rook takes pawn, and now, so I'm thinking here, pawn takes knight. Maybe I should have simply retreated the bishop at that point. I think probably bishop to here might have been good, because I'm simply losing material by recapturing the pawn instead of saving my bishop. But hey, so I lose my bishop. So I'm down 1 point right now, basically. I've captured a rook, but white has an extra. White basically has 2 bishops for my rook. That's the way it is. Okay, and now this is the killer tactic. Queen is defending the g4 square. I've got my queen and my rook on the same diagonal, and I just didn't spot it. And they've been there for quite a while. So I push f5, and now rook comes across with check. I retreat the king. Bishop takes, and now we swap off rooks. Maybe not the best idea again. And now I have no other option really other than to trade my rook for a bishop and a pawn. So now we're in a situation where we've both got 4 pawns, we've both got a queen and a king, but the biggest imbalance is material, that white has an extra bishop. Now, this is where it comes to the business end, because now what I need to do is to say, okay, it's going to be very, very hard to win this game. Maybe if the king goes to the corner, I might have an outside chance of some kind of back rank surprise mate, but that's really holding out for a miracle, because my opponent has proved to be playing a lot sharper than me in this game. So what can I do? The king actually, so with this pawn capture, the king actually does dodge to the corner. It's forced at this point. The only alternative would be queen to c2 to block. And then an exchange of queens would probably have still been completely winning for white. But the king dodges to the corner, and now there are possibilities of a surprise back rank. Pushes a3, I push a6, and basically we'll play through the rest of this fairly quickly, because there's a lot of moves now, there's a lot of manoeuvring. So now I'm attacking the pawn, queen comes in with check and defends the pawn, bishop comes in with check. Okay, b6 blocks, check, king moves, check, king moves. So I'm zigzagging towards the queen, and there will be a point where white can no longer do this, because I'm thinking now that I am definitely on the ropes. The money is not on me in this game at all. The only real hope that I've got is to try and force a draw. And this is really the point, that I don't often think play for the draw enough. But there are times when I've clearly been on top in a game and I've let my, say, opponent's queen get behind my lines, and the queen might just do a repetition, force draw by repetition. Okay, perpetual mate, all that kind of stuff. And sometimes I feel like, well, that's not very sporting. You should be playing for a win, but it's the rules. It's the rules of the game. It's the rules of chess. Okay, check, king moves, check, king moves, check, king moves back, check. So he's giving check from all these different angles. Now he engages his bishop. So the bishop's looking at this pawn here, My queen is also looking at these 2 pawns. This one is undefended. And that, but now, you see this move, I think here, this is still a completely winning position for white. Maybe if the queen had come in to here, something like that, I'm not sure. But I'm sure there's a win here. Queen to there, king to here, queen can come in there. You know, it's looking very, very treacherous right now. Then try and force the king, say, onto d8 at some point, and then the bishop can come in, grab the pawn with check. But according to the engine, this is completely winning still for white. But he makes this move, right? And interesting, I've been waiting for a chance to get my queen in because I can see that I have this diagonal with the possibility of like a forced draw by repetition. And putting the bishop here on this square actually gives me the f1 square. So I play queen to f1, king a2 is forced, queen to there, king has to come back. All right, there's a few more moves. Queen there, king now tries to come into the board, which I think is a good idea. Queen here again. Now again, white could actually have blocked with the bishop at this point. King moves, queen back to here, and king goes back to a2. Now the king's already been on a2, and my queen's already been on c4. Okay, so this is now the second point in the game where we've had this same position. King goes there, and here that is now a draw by repetition because we've got the same exact position on the board for the third time. And so I thought that was very, well, in a way satisfying. I mean, I was outplayed in the game, but I think that my opponent's mistake was to allow me to get in with my queen and start checking his king, and fell for a repetition. I mean, I did exactly the same thing myself yesterday. So I think the message here is, if you are keen on guarding your online rating, develop a sense for forced draws. Whether you could kind of salvage a losing game by forcing a draw by repetition yourself, or even stalemate, but also when you're the one with the upper hand, it's worth just asking the question in your mind: if I, at this point, just take the pressure off my opponent just enough that they can get a queen or a rook or whatever behind my lines and start attacking my king, am I at risk of one of these forced draws? You know, and that's really the point of the story. To don't forget about this strategy, that forcing a draw, it's basically the same as like almost the difference between winning and losing a game, where it's half of that, right? Even if you're losing, is there the opportunity for a draw? And if you're winning, is there an opportunity for your opponent to save face and to prevent losing so many points by them forcing a draw as well? So just don't forget about that, because it can make a difference. And I think knowing when to play for a draw, knowing how to prevent these forced draws, it could be that thing that just makes a difference in the growth of your rating. So just keep an eye out. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. See you soon.